Hey everyone, welcome to this episode of Talks at Google. My name is Yul Kwon and I lead the local team here at Google. Once again, I'm excited to join all of you in celebrating Asian Pacific American Heritage Month, and I am super excited to introduce today's guest, Bowen Yang. Bowen is a comedian, writer, and actor based in Brooklyn, New York, and was recently featured in Time Magazine's 100 Most Influential People of 2021. He's currently an Emmy-nominated cast member on one of my all-time favorite shows, Saturday Night Live, which I spent way too many nights breaking curfew to watch throughout my life. You may have also caught Bowen on Comedy Central's Awkwafina as Nora From Queens and in Paramount's The Lost City, starring Sandra Bullock and Channing Tatum. Bowen, welcome to Talks at Google.
Hi, Yul. Thank you so much for that introduction. I know we've gotten this out of the way backstage, but anyway, you're very heroic to me in terms of someone who was just so powerful and so interesting and just such a good reality. Whatever. Not to.
It's all in the editing. Seriously,
I'm not.
I'm not. The most common comment I get whenever people meet me in real life is like, "I thought you were a lot taller and better looking."
It's not
smarter.
Well, it's not even those things. Although I'm sure you're taller than me. You're whatever. All the rest. But I mean, I just think in terms of like you being someone who was just such a positive representation was really important.
Seriously, that means a lot to me. I went on television because I just didn't grow up seeing a lot of people from our community on television.
Right.
And my role model growing up was Big Bird on Sesame Street, right? Because like clearly he was yellow and
yellow and tall,
and had friends. And I just really, the great thing about a reality show is that it's not scripted, so you don't have to read the lines that someone else wrote.
Right.
And my hope was that like by being on the show in the future, other people from our community, like people like you who actually have real talent, would have more opportunities to really like kill it, and go far beyond anything I could have done. And when I watch your career, like you're like such an inspiration for me. Like not only are you like on this iconic show that I watched growing up, but I never saw people from our community on, but you are just killing it. Like you are not just like being successful in that platform, but using that to really speak out in issues that are impactful for the various communities that you represent. And I couldn't be proud of you. Like seriously, like you are giving a voice to so many people. And when I think of myself, like when I was a kid and thinking, gosh, I felt so lonely, I felt marginalized, I didn't have anyone I could look up to. I'm just imagining how many kids out there are watching you and seeing, like if Bowen can do it, I can do it too. Like I don't have to feel as lonely, I don't have to be as afraid. And I feel like what you're doing, like through humor, but also just the bravery that you're showing through speaking out has just been so impactful for kids in our community. Like even my kids like are just huge fans. So Thank you. Sorry, I want to get that out of the way. Like
no,
I'm
that's
a huge
so
fan of
nice.
yours.
I know too much about your family. I feel I feel like I've seen like the photos, and it's just I've always just been so heartwarmed by that, and it's very heartwarming to hear you say that. That's really nice.
I mean, I remember when I won Survivor, like I was almost more afraid to win than I was to lose, because
interesting,
just getting that kind of visibility and feeling that pressure, and I didn't know what to make of it. Like on one hand, like I was slightly resentful because I was like, I don't like, it's not the thing that I wanted to be, but at the same time, I did feel this kind of responsibility to be able to use the platform that I have to try to further causes that I believed in.
Yeah.
And it took me a while to feel comfortable with it. Like, and I'm still kind of uncomfortable with it, but
sure.
I mean, it seems like from where, at least from my perspective, you've done such a much more graceful job than I have of being able to kind of embrace this, but also do it in such a way that feels authentic and that's actually constructive.
Thank you. I mean, that's interesting. It's interesting. It's really fascinating that you say that, because I feel somewhat similarly every now and then. It's not a constant like underlying feeling, but of course, like in your low moments, like that you have with the bad moments you have with the good, I feel like the thought that runs through my mind is, ooh, I don't know if I'm the right person, or I don't know if I should have been the person in this position, whatever the position means, wherever that is. Like, and I can't tell if that's like a documented Asian American notion.
Yeah.
If it's this thing that's pretty common with us, like I don't know if like Kathy Park Hong wrote about it in her book, in Minor Feelings, but like I feel like there is this sense of like, if it's not that, then at least it's this feeling of indebtedness. And I think it's like the last essay in her book where she talks about this phenomenon among Asian Americans where we kind of go into something.
Yeah.
Achieve something, find ourselves in some bigger structure or something that makes us feel like we are indebted to that place.
Yeah.
And that is good. And also, and that's sort of like, baked into our cultural DNA, but it's also something that might hold us back.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Is this something that you feel like has held you back in any way?
Maybe. I think I'm still in the process of paying my respects, being like, I'm so grateful to be here.
Yeah.
But also not trying to be too subservient, not trying to be too on the back heel,
Right.
And I feel like in terms of a cultural identity among Asian Americans, I feel like now we're being politicized to I think it's a good kind of politicization of thinking that like we are not begging for our dignity anymore.
Yeah.
That I think like with what's been happening, I think it's been very obvious that we're all like, we're not gonna like try to prove to you that we're like human beings that like don't deserve to be like violently assaulted, Like I think we're way past that. I think that's a good thing.
Yeah.
But I think there's something like there's a little kernel of that tucked away in like every one of our brains where we're like, ooh, I don't know if this is the thing for me or if I've earned this. It's that concept of earning it. Anyway, we're starting off so deep.
Yeah.
Cool.
Well, I have lots of thoughts. I mean, lots of conflicted feelings, like the sense of indebtedness, the sense of like also kind of imposter syndrome. Like, am I really the right person to be in this situation? Like, do I deserve it? Am I going to reflect and represent well? Why do I even have to feel this way? Why do I have to even ask these questions? Like, why can't I just be myself? Yeah. The thing that I really love is just in the intervening years, and especially now, it's what I was afraid of. And part of the reason why I felt the pressure was because there was so few representation of Asian Americans in media that I felt like if there's only going to be just like one representation or a couple or a few, like it had to be a certain way. But now we're seeing so many different voices and so many different faces. And I think it's doing what is actually the right thing, the better thing, which is to present Asian Americans not as this monolithic group, like, that are all one certain way, but this like diversity of different, like we're just human beings. Like we have our flaws, we have, all that stuff. And I'm seeing so much of that in a way that I feel like really humanizes us. And after a while, just makes ethnicity not even a thing. We're just people.
Totally. Like I've been in enough rooms with other Asian people that I go like, even like, let's say like I go to like a restaurant or something, and there happen to be a lot of Asian people there because it might be an Asian restaurant. Let's just say like that's just a very general example, but like I look around and I go, whoa, like maybe it's like a New York thing, I don't know, but I look around and I go, oh, like there's just different like crowds. It feels like a cafeteria at like a public high school or something, I don't know. But like I've been in enough rooms now, but even outside of like the restaurant example, I don't know why I brought that up, but like even outside of that, I feel like I've been in enough rooms where I go, oh, everyone's pretty different.
Yeah.
And like, isn't that refreshing?
Yeah. Yeah. I remember, I grew up, I was born in New York. My parents immigrated from Korea, and then I grew up in California. But yeah, I don't know. It's weird. I actually experienced a pretty decent amount of, racism growing up, a lot of bullying, which, I've spoken about in other contexts that I feel like was a result of racism, but also led to some really kind of profound, psychological mental health issues that, have stayed with me like well throughout my life. Like I feel like, I grew up a very shy, introverted kid, like extremely shy. And I still fundamentally am really introverted to this day. And I feel like a lot of these things really kind of perpetuated this feeling of alienation, not belonging, the absence of seeing positive role models in the community or as well as on television, getting bullied. Like these are all things that took me a long time to overcome. And I'd always hoped that like when I got older, the next generation of APIs like wouldn't have to be held back by these things and take so long for them to find their own voice. Like it took me a really long time to build that sense of confidence. And that's why I'm so excited to see, like people like yourself who are, again, still encountering some of these issues, but we're able to kind of find their voice much earlier on. And we're not constrained in the same way that I often felt when I was growing up, at least in a professional capacity. So again, I feel like, it's been a long road, but you're really taking it to the next level in terms of being able to, and again, I don't know to what extent.
No, that's
but yeah, it's really super. I can't tell you how happy I am, seriously, to see your success.
Well, it's just surreal that you're saying this because I feel the same way about you in terms of, I mean, like, I have this movie coming out called Fire Island with Margaret Cho. She's in it. And I've always said, I mean, and Joel, my very good friend who wrote the movie, is the lead in it, is executive producer on it. Comes from a completely different Asian experience than me. And, he was adopted from Korea in the 80s. And we've both like come into like, we've still found common ground in terms of like what it means to be like an Asian comedian. And in terms of being a queer Asian comedian, like we had Margaret Cho to look up to. And I feel like she was, I think for me, I think in terms of an Asian representation model, like I think the most helpful thing is to show you how to cope with the things that you deal with, right? The things that we all deal with. And Margaret was someone who like showed me that. And like you were someone who showed me that. And like these are just people who like clue you into something, that like invite you into like a new way of thinking. And like I don't know if I'm doing anything necessarily new under the sun. I think I'm just like trying to like pass this thing down. And I'm sure Margaret feels the same way about she grew up in San Francisco. Like I'm sure she feels the same way about someone that she probably looked up to growing up. I feel like it's this like secret, unspoken, and yet now it's being expressed and spoken, but like it's this thing that we kind of keep passing down.
Yeah.
I hope.
Interesting. So when you were growing up, who were the folks that you kind of looked up to as role models? So Margaret Cho was one.
Yes.
Were there others? And what were some of the lessons that it seems like you've gotten an opportunity to actually get to know and build relationships with these folks. And what were some of the things that you learned from them?
I mean, that's the remarkable thing, is that like some of these people are friends now and are still mentors, but they're friends. I mean, BD Wong is someone I loved growing up.
Yeah, I did too.
And then and the chance to work with him and then be his friend in the process has been it feels like a blessing. It really does feel like something that like was gifted by like whatever like thing in the world. And he's someone who has been able to put into words things that like I only see as abstract. And so it's definitely him. We did a quick little interview with Michelle Yeoh for Everything Everywhere All at Once, and that was so special. And I mean, that's not like a relationship necessarily, but it is just like this really lovely thing. And I feel like I think we're like finding community in some sort of like on a larger scale. I mean, community is like the thing that's like gotten us through so much over like the decades and centuries that Asians have been in this country. But I feel like there's a way to like maybe like beam that out to people now.
Yeah.
Like so that people can like see what it looks like when Asian people like come together and like are friends or enemies or whatever, like it's, I think, frenemies. So I think that's like been the nice thing. Does that feel too like abstract? Is that
no. I mean, another person no, it totally makes sense. And again, the thing that's really awesome is that there are enough people that can even be mentioned in the breadth of being like a role model, who can be a mentor. Like, when I was growing up, there weren't a lot of folks like that.
Right.
Where did that initial interest in comedy come from? Was that something that had always been with you, or did you discover that once you got to college?
I feel like I think that was always with me. And we grew up in Canada, and there was this festival there called Just for Laughs that still goes on today, where it was free to the public for a lot of the shows, these outdoor shows that were just along the water. And it was just a really beautiful, eye-opening thing. And then we would watch like Mr. Bean, or there would be like Chinese sketch comedy that would play like from my parents. Like my parents would bought a satellite dish and like had to like install it a certain way to get the Chinese channels. Like this was back before like anything digital. And then so that like I think I grew up with parents who like appreciated that.
Yeah.
They were very strict and stern, and the stakes were very high, obviously, in terms of being immigrants, but also there was this levity, and I think that's pretty common across all immigrant families. You have to diffuse the struggle and like the pain and like the the work that goes into just existing and raising a family and doing all that, and you kind of have to like balance that out with something. And my parents knew like every Lunar New Year you'd put it on, there would be like the festival show, and there would always be like, there was this guy, it's all been Sen, who was this like folk, he'd always play like a folk hero in all these sketches, and there was that. And then we moved to the US, and then that was when I discovered SNL and Mad TV, and Bobby Lee came on, and I was just like, oh my God, who is this guy? Like, and he was probably working at a very different time during comedy and during television, where it was probably really, really difficult for him.
Really
and
hard.
He still did a great job. So
yeah. Out of curiosity, when you finally had this realization that like becoming a doctor was not in your future, but going into comedy and entertainment was, I'm trying to rewind to when I told my parents that I was going to leave Google like 16 years ago to go on a reality show. And I honestly thought they were going to disown me. It was kind of like, they were like, what? Like, we like sacrificed by coming to this country, and like we worked our butts off to give you these opportunities, and you're blowing it all away to embarrass, your family and Asian people all over the world by being on this like silly reality show. And it was really hard. I was trying to explain to my parents, like, listen, it's like, because you made these sacrifices, it's afforded me this opportunity that otherwise like people from your generation wouldn't have gotten. And so I felt like at least this kind of like, I had to take a shot, even though I didn't feel like I'd be the best person for it. I just like, how often does an opportunity like this come to someone in our community, right? And if we don't try to like use these in a positive way, but again, it was a very, very painful, long series of conversations, and I don't think they get quite forgiven me yet. How did that conversation go with your parents? Like when you told them, hey, mom and dad, thanks, but I'm not going to be a doctor.
Right.
How did they react? And did they eventually come around, or are they still kind of like, one of these days I'll go back and get your medical degree?
Right. I mean, that conversation didn't stop. I mean, it hasn't stopped until very recently. I think when I got moved to the cast, that's when the cast of SNL, that's when things were like, okay, I think he's in this for the long haul.
Yeah.
Like my dad literally, like when I was a writer at SNL, was like, there's always grad school for like a chemistry program or something. And the conversation was really difficult, I remember. But they had an inkling that like this was a passion of mine, because I was going, into the city in Denver when I was in high school, like with my high school group, doing improv downtown. And my parents would be like, what do you do down there? And I go, oh, it's this like comedy, it's this improv comedy show. It's sort of like, you make it up as you go. And then I would invite them to the shows at school, and they'd be like, we don't understand this at all. And so, it was just this like a gap in understanding that like you try and manage. But I don't know if you ever have the hope or the determination. At least I didn't. I never expected them to get it fully.
Yeah.
Because it is something that's so foreign.
Yeah.
And
how are they with it now? Are they comfortable with it? Are they supportive? Have they given up trying to convince you?
They've given up. I think I like wore them down. I know, but now they're just, I think they understand that I derive this sense of accomplishment from it. I think that's all. I think that's all they wanted. I think it was really hard for them to see me feel accomplished in comedy until I like got a job that like got me health insurance or whatever. Like I think they like were like, this is tough. What's that?
I was like, health insurance. I got health insurance.
Right, you made it. Exactly. You made it. That's like the marker. That's like the new American dream. But like I feel like it took them a while. I mean, I got hired to write at SNL, and the first thing my dad asked me was, does this mean you have to move to Hollywood? Like you have to move to LA? Like he didn't understand that it took place, that it works out of New York and all this stuff. So like, the markers of success are a little bit more arbitrary to, I think, an immigrant family.
Yeah, for me, it wasn't until, like, my parents didn't fully accept it until, like, I'd send them newspaper clippings or articles, whatever. Like, they're like, yeah, it doesn't matter. As soon as I got this tiny little mention in the local Korean paper, my parents are like overjoyed. They sent it to all their church friends, and boom, then I was like, good.
It's something they can send to their church friends. That's what it is.
Exactly.
It's a clipping. But yeah, I mean, because I think the first moment I have an answer to this question again, because the first moment that my mom was like not understood that I was doing okay was this is before I worked on SNL, but I was just doing comedy in New York, you know, making ends meet. And my friend and I did a quick segment on The Tonight Show because it had been successful outside of, you know, on our podcast and at live shows. And I did that on The Tonight Show. And then she went into work the next day at her lab. And all of her coworkers were like, "Did you see Bowen was on The Tonight Show last night? You must be so proud." And it took like, and I think this is a pretty common thing among immigrants, at least, is that it takes something that like other people can validate.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is fine. I mean, you know, in theory, it sounds like a little hurtful. Like, oh, why can't it just come from within? Why can't they just be proud without an external thing? But I think like that's something that like has to be so clear to them in order for them to feel it, and that's okay.
Yeah. I think the external validation counts for a lot. In part because, like, you know, they want to be, you know, again, they come from a different culture, but they want to be proud and they want to be able to talk to their friends. And as soon as their other friends are like, "Oh, this thing is like legit," and it's like something deserving of respect, then it's like sort of legitimizes it and blesses it.
Totally.
I was very happy.
Did you getting the check when you won not mean anything?
Not so much. It was really, the way I convinced my parents was one, the blurb in the Korean paper, and then I also convinced my parents that going on a reality show would help me expose me to a lot of potential spouses and their Korean mothers. And then
is that how you met Sophie? Is that? Oh,
actually, I kind of did.
Then there you go. It worked.
I know, it kind of worked. Yeah. So
it proved out.
Yeah, because at that point, I think I was getting old enough that my parents were getting kind of worried, like, "Hey, is this guy ever going to settle down?" And
oh my gosh,
yeah.
Wow, that's so interesting.
Yeah. Hey, so let's talk about. I'd love to cover your time on Saturday Night Live. I mean, that thing you just sort of catapulted. You were kind of a staff writer, and then you got onto the full cast. Like, what has that experience been like for you? And then would also love to talk about the movie that you're going to be doing. So Fire Island. I'd love to kind of understand like how that happened. And so can you just walk me through real quick about the career at Saturday Night Live and how this is like, you know, what was the experience like and how that kind of unlocked other opportunities for you?
I got hired to write, and then the next year I was with Nora shooting the first season when I got the call that Lauren wanted to move me to the cast.
Yeah.
And so that just felt full circle, where I was like this project where I got to be with other Asian actors, be in a family sitcom. It's not only a show with other Asian actors, but it's a family sitcom, which like, how often do you get that? Like, how often do you get like, you know, we were shooting a scene where we were eating food, and then all four of us, me, BD, Nora, Awkwafina, and Lori Tianchen, who plays her grandmother, we're all just talking about like wood ears and like different Chinese dishes and like their experiences shooting in Asia, like all these different things. And I was like, wait, I've never experienced this on a set before. I've never experienced this shorthand.
Yeah.
We don't have to explain ourselves to each other.
Yeah.
Where I was used to doing that in every other setting, where I was like showing up to work, kind of not really sure how I fit in. And this was just so organic and so natural.
Yeah.
And then the fact that I had that experience before going into SNL kind of like gave me some not armor, but it gave me like thick enough skin to be like, oh, I know this is maybe what I should be used to here, but I know that there's something else out there that's more in line with like who I am as a person.
Yeah. And then once you actually made it onto the show as like a regular cast member, did things change? Like, did you feel pressure to be a certain way, or were you able to just keep that like, I don't really care, I'm just going to be myself, and you know, and has that been something that ended up resonating with people?
Well, I think I've like tried to balance between both. Like I think I like was trying to like not really care too much about whatever the responsibility meant.
Yeah.
And also was like trying to think in terms of like this justified sense of like a lot of Asian people thinking that like there is this trope of like an effeminate Asian man in media, in American media, right? And I was like, well, I can't help certain parts of that, but I can help like writing a sketch that has nothing to do with me being Asian, you know, like writing something that has nothing to do with me, like that can like try to not break any sort of mold, but just sort of at least make a dent in it.
Yeah.
And like, it's going to be slow. I'm not going to be the person who like really changes anything, you know, it's going to be this concerted communal effort. And I think that's already happened. I mean, with Simu, with Ronnie Chang, with like Jimmy O Yang, with like so many other Asian actors, it's like there is like I think like we could always use more, but I feel like there's enough out there now where I think like no one is shouldering all of the pressure necessarily. So I think that's been helpful. It's been helpful to like, and especially when Simu came to host. Like that was just, it was such a breath of fresh air. Well, it was like, oh my gosh, like I don't, this feels like it opens up so many possibilities. Like we were able to write the sketch where we talk about being like first Asian.
Right. Yeah.
We're making a comment. We're making a comment on like that media narrative where it's like it's important certainly, but it's like we get to poke fun at it a little bit too.
Yeah. I gotta say, so that skit you did with Simu, where you're basically trying to compete with one another to become the first Asian of multiple things.
Yeah.
That just killed me. That was it was one of my favorite things. I shared it with my wife and other friends. The funny thing is, I interviewed Simu last year on Google, and again, she was a super thoughtful person, like someone who, like yourself, supremely talented. But one of the things I really respect is like you using that platform, not just for your kind of narrow self-interest, but really trying to like broaden awareness of issues that impact your community and the different kind of communities you represent. For people who don't have context, if you haven't seen this thing, I highly recommend it. It's basically, it's kind of a taped skit where they're trying to outdo one another on who is the first Asian of multiple things. And so I think in Simu's case, he was the first Asian to become a Marvel superhero lead and the first Asian man to deadpan for a photo on Splash Mountain.
Yes.
Oh, and in your case, you're not only the first fully Asian cast member on Saturday Night Live, but in the skit, you've also won the state of Michigan's Good Job Asian Award.
That's right.
And you even won up Simu by being the first gay Asian man to deadpan for a photo on Splash Mountain.
There you go.
So I guess the question I had with you is just, a little bit tongue-in-cheek, like what is can you tell me more about the rivalry between you and Simu? And can you try to make the case for why you should be considered the better Asian?
Oh my God! Just in general, well, I'll be. I am the first gay Asian Saturday Night Live cast member to talk with Yul Kwon at Talks at Google.
Nice.
How about that? Nice. I'm not the first Asian to have a Talks at Google with Yul Kwon, but could Simu beat me to that, I guess, or even someone else beat Simu to that. But oh my gosh. I mean, I think that's like the fact that like Asian people and even non-Asian people understand like what is being commented on in that sketch. Like, it's great. Like it shows that like there is a sense of humor about the way that we consider ourselves. Like it's important for sure. Like, I mean, and Simu is someone who like wears this mantle so well, who like takes on the responsibility so well. And he has a much bigger platform than me, but so I think he is the better Asian, unfortunately.
I know. We'll see. I got high hopes for you.
Thanks, you.
One question. I mean, it is like the mental being first of. I mean, I remember, for me, I struggled with that a little bit as well. Like on one hand, it was like, it's great that there is like you are kind of being a trailblazer, but at the same time, it's also kind of like sobering to realize like, wow, we're still even in this day and age. The representation of APIs in the media is still not where it would ideally be. And the fact that you are the first of so many, like, is that something that you feel comfortable with? And do you feel like it's something that you embrace and use it to motivate you? Or are you still kind of, come to grips with that to some extent?
I think I'm still probably coming to grips with it, but I do think I've landed in a place where there's a gratitude, like, oh, this means that you can like show a different side to things that people haven't seen before in comedy, maybe, but also, I mean, that happens like once in a blue moon. Like it's usually I show up to work and I like, know what I have to do. And I don't always have to put the pressure on myself to like do something completely new. But that was something that I got hung up on too. And then it wasn't until I talked to BD Wong about this, and he's been in the career for almost as long as I've been alive. And he's said that like, you must get asked all the time, talking to me, like you must get asked all the time about how like, why hasn't there been an Asian person on SNL in like 45 years? Is that a failing of the show? And it's actually, to BD, for him, it's not. It's more that there are not all of these like developmental things for the Asian community on a community level where it becomes an inevitability that someone would end up in comedy or show business or at SNL. we haven't made it this thing culturally where like you can encourage, you know, Asian people to get into comedy, or you can encourage people to like explore a different sector. Like and the people who like genuinely do well in like the sectors that like are traditionally associated with Asian Americanness, like should be there. But there are these other paths and opportunities for people who might have considered it, but maybe were not sure what it looked like. And I think hopefully we're getting to a place where like those tent poles are there for people, like the track is there for people to just like get on, so that they end up where they want to be.
Right. I think it's a combination of both kind of internal constraints and external constraints, right? Internally, just, you know, within the community, kind of, you know, from a cultural standpoint, a lot of people don't feel like they have the kind of license or support from their community to explore these alternative paths. They don't have the visibility into like how you even like get started. And then you marry that with some of the external constraints, right? You know, the fact that there are these sort of more institutional choke points where historically they have not been embracing of diversity. All this stuff is starting to change. And I feel like, you know, and let me know if you disagree, but I feel like we've kind of hit a tipping point. Like the amount of progress I feel like we've made just in the last few years is just compounding on itself. And, you know, again, like I think with having people like you at the vanguard of this, I'm really optimistic about what the future holds in store for us. I don't know how you feel.
Yeah, I feel very hopeful too. Just in terms of it being outside of me. Like I think I'm just excited for like another wave of people. Like I'm just excited to like see like someone who like kind of blows us all away. Like, you know, like
well, I'm sure there are kids watching you right now who would not be considering pursuing a career in the media if it wasn't for you. So, you know, they will circle back in like 10, 20 years, but I have no doubt that there'll be other people having, you know, conversations like this, like, yeah, Bowen was a person who really inspired me. And, you know, hopefully one day he'll be someone mentors them as well.
Well, I think it's this thing now where we're talking about like it's gonna be multiple people. It's gonna be like a community of people that wants to like that is. It's not gonna be like one. It doesn't fall on one person to be like the catalyst for that for someone who wants.
You need enough. You need the critical mass,
right? And I think hopefully we're getting there where it is like it's a bunch of people. It's someone who goes, it's all these different people in all these different disciplines. Some that have nothing to do with like what they want to get into that like kind of like push them into that direction.
All right, Bowen, we have a bunch of great questions from people in the audience. Before we get into that, I just want to chat real quick about this new project you have, Fire Island. Can you talk about it? Like, how did it get started? You know, why did you decide this is something that you want to kind of help tell the story around? Yeah, just to
for sure.
Get excited.
Well, Fire Island is this barrier island off of the coast of Long Island in New York. It's been this enclave for queer people since the 1920s, for at least 100 years, to just, you know, have a space for themselves, especially when they were being like raided by police up until the 70s. And, you know, now it's kind of this nice vacation destination for a lot of people. And my friend Joel Booster, amazing stand-up comedian, and also screenwriter and actor, wrote the script with us in mind after we had gone to Fire Island many times together, where we were sort of like, you know, could barely afford it, and we're not sure how we fit into like this weird hierarchy of people, among gay men at least, of like where like the Asian people are like kind of at the bottom of the rung. And it was, you know, thank God we had each other in those times to navigate it together and be like, hey, did you feel this way too? Like, is this weird to you too? But he was reading Pride and Prejudice with me on our first trip next to me, and he was like, it'd be so funny if I wrote a script that was about Fire Island, but it is just a modern adaptation of Pride and Prejudice about how like the social hierarchies and the class differences are all applicable to this environment. And I was like, oh sure, that'd be great. And then didn't think much of it until he like made good on his promise years later and like had a script and started to pitch it out and sell it. But we were both on our different paths. His more stand-up and acting, and me more in terms of like being on SNL, where we both like were able to come up together fortuitously to like be able to like make this movie and like attach ourselves to it. So it's a great rom-com. It's got 4 Asian American leads. It's remarkable. Like, and it's this like really nice summer movie that hopefully makes you feel like you've gone on a vacation with the people in it, and there are really nice sort of classical love stories that are based on Jane Austen novels that are sort of perennially appealing, and it was a really special project to be.
Yeah, I've heard the early reviews on this have been terrific. So I'm really,
yeah.
Can you give maybe some details? I think, is it coming out on June 3rd? Is that
June
right?
3rd, yes. Friday, June 3rd, 2022.
On Hulu?
On Hulu, yes. And Disney Plus in other countries.
Okay. And was it hard to get something like this off the ground? I mean, imagine like you wind back 10 years and this would never have gotten greenlighted.
Right. I think I agree. I think it got off the ground because of the script that Joel wrote being pretty undeniable. And I think it got off the ground because, like I said, like I think Joel and I were kind of remarkably on separate tracks, even though we were close friends and always saw each other and like confided in each other. Like I think we were always frustrated at people in the comedy community mixing the two of us up, thinking we did the same thing when we didn't, thinking we looked the same. I mean, like there would be Joel and I would text each other once a week, being like, "Someone at a show in Brooklyn thought I was you." You know, like it's
much nicer abs.
He has a much nicer everything, and so I'm just like it was just frustrating, and then finally, like I think we've differentiated ourselves enough that we've been able to be distinct names as part of this project, and I think I credit it all to him. He's the person who got it off the ground. I'm just along for the ride and so happy to be part of it.
Well, the trailer looks fantastic. I really hope this will be a great success for you. Like again, like from what I've read, it sounds pretty awesome. Thanks. But for everyone watching here, please encourage you to check this out. I mean, it's still rare nowadays to see a movie like this be made, especially, and it's just great that we're now living in a time where we have like great talent. We have both on the screen and behind the screen, but we also have enough like, I don't know, like data points of success that a mainstream company would like fund this and put it out for mainstream distribution. So like, I feel like this is our opportunity. Yeah. Okay, a ton of questions. So I'll try to go through them fairly quickly, but these are audience Q&A. All right, so Oscar writes, huge fan of you, Bowen. I wanted to ask, what was the biggest struggle for you in embarking and persisting on the path you have taken to get to where you are now? And now that you have made it, how has the struggle changed or remained the same?
I think this struggle is something we've probably touched on like this whole time. It's just this internal sense of like not feeling deserving. And I feel like hopefully there's this like sea change, at least as a community, where we get to say, oh no, like this, why are we selling ourselves short? Why are we inhibiting that? Yeah.
Okay, Kent asks, you studied chemistry, Yul Kwon lawyered and survived, Ken Jeong is Dr. Jeong, Constance Wu studied psycholinguistics, Simu Liu did accounting. I wanted to do comedy, but studied math. I do comedy now. API cultural pressure sometimes does lead to, I guess, conventional success, but do we want it for the next generation?
Well, I tend to think, and I don't know if you feel this way about yourself, I feel like it kind of gives you a wider scope on the world. And I think about all the stuff, all the sectors you've worked in, and I feel like I always imagine you to have had so many different experiences and met so many, as introverted as you are, I'm sure you've met so many different kinds of people and worked with so many different kinds of people, right? And I feel like there is value to that. I don't know if I want, in terms of the next generation, I don't know if I want it. I don't know. It's so complicated. It's weird to like wish that upon someone else. I think the nice thing now is, I mean, I think Asian Americanness always gets coupled with some other thing, some other pursuit, whether it's like the pursuit of making money or the pursuit of like attaining knowledge or something like, and those are all virtuous things in some way. But I feel like there is hopefully a place of suspension where you just get to be Asian for being Asian.
Yeah.
I don't know if like we'll get culturally defined anytime soon, but hopefully we are. But I feel like for this person, like to answer that question, I feel like it's about just being a comedian for the sake of being a comedian.
Yeah, the way I look at it, like, I feel like there are many different forms of success and many different ways that different people can find happiness and fulfillment. And the thing that I would love to see is that, the community, the cultural, like supports them in finding that passion and supporting them through that journey. Whereas before it was very constrained in terms of like these conventional paths to success. Sure. But now it's like, for some people it might be the right thing, but for other people who want to do something that is today considered to be kind of off the beaten path, like want to provide them that support, that encouragement, with what you're talking about, like kind of at different stages of that journey, providing the institutional support that they would need to be successful and find happiness.
Right.
All right, Kira asks, hi Bowen, huge fan, reader of the pod and all your work. You're someone who seems extremely booked and busy all of the time. How do you find time to rest and recharge with so much going on? What helps ground and center you in hectic times, and how does that connect to the broader idea of community?
Oh, wow. I mean, I used to be so anti-astrology because I thought it went against so many of my values. And I've read too many like Carl Sagan books growing up to be like, whatever. But like lately there's one astrologer I follow who talks about the communal mood, and that ends up being this thing that I listen to just once a week. And it's not like anything, I'm not like planning my days around it, or I'm not like telling people like you're this person because you're a Libra or whatever. But I do like to connect to some sort of like, what's a communal mood that we can key into. Anyway, the self-care, if this is the question, thing that I do is it's a bubble bath on Sundays, and I'll listen to
awesome.
I'll listen to this like 20-minute like quote unquote reading.
Okay, maybe the last customer audience question. Kaden asks, Bowen, thank you for the exquisite 300 songs from the great global songbook episodes. On behalf of the readers/publicists, we loved it and crave more. Should we be expecting more themed episodes in the future?
Okay, did that question make any sense to you, Yul, in reading that?
No, but I was hoping it made sense to you.
It made sense to you. By the way, we did like pivot to a quick Survivor podcast moment for a while.
Really?
Yeah, your name has come up so many times.
Okay.
We're both, my co-host Matt and I, who's in the movie Fire Island with me, one of my best friends.
Yeah.
He got me onto Survivor years ago, and I feel like anyway. But the podcast themed episodes, yes, there will be themed episodes, and it also just is like it's a very elastic, amorphous show. We get to sort of do whatever we want, and it's fun.
Okay. Yeah. All right. So just to finish off, maybe a few rapid fire questions that just require like 1 or 2 word answers. Okay. New York or Los Angeles?
Oh, New York.
Favorite food?
Favorite food? Ooh, right now, like a beef noodle soup from like a Chinese place.
If you had a superpower, what would it be?
Probably time travel.
Ooh, I think
yeah.
All the time paradoxes. Ooh.
Yeah, I know. I wouldn't want to mess with too much.
Favorite I don't think so, honey segment.
Oh, I don't think so, honey. Someone did I don't think so, honey for Garfield recently. Like, why does he hate Mondays when he doesn't have a job? It doesn't make any sense.
That's true.
Yeah.
I was such a fan of Garfield. I had every single book when I was growing up. I never.
It never occurred to us, right?
It's true. Why does he hate Mondays? Okay, last one. It's not a question, but it's more like a request. We love the Pride Month song and SNL. One of these years, can you consider doing one for APA Heritage Month?
Definitely. Boom. Definitely. And I've always wanted to do something around Lunar New Year.
That would be great.
For SNL. When we brought on a new writer, Celeste Diem, on, who's an amazing playwright from Toronto. I mean, and now they're one of my best friends, and they're such an important collaborator. They've written so many great things, and it's so nice to have, like, I don't know if 2 people counts as community, but it feels like there's just like such a power there for the 2 of us. So yeah.
Bowen, I think we're out of time.
Okay.
I really want to thank you for the time together. I really enjoyed this. And just from the bottom of my heart, like, I wish you the most success. Like, your success is all of our success, and we're all rooting for you. So please keep doing what you're doing, be yourself and make us proud.
Thank you so much, Yul. It was so meaningful to talk to you as someone who's just admired you for so long, and just wishing you all the best this summer with the family and with the kids.
Yeah. All right, Bowen, take care and good luck.
Thanks, Yul. You too.
Okay, take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.